Hopefully this is a welcome back, and hopefully you watched the first video in this series. My name is Josette Vigil. I'm a student studying mechanical engineering and biology at Northern Arizona University. And today is going to be, like I said, the second installment of the Build Your Own Sensor series. And today we're going to be talking about how to think like a computer. This background video is going to be a little bit longer than the last one, just because there's a little bit more stuff to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, think like a computer. So quick warm-up question. You can go ahead and pause your video, maybe think about this a little bit. How do you make a sandwich? And try to kind of mentally or even write down a list of steps. And if you kind of think about it a little bit, then you'll see that, wow, there's actually a lot of detail. If you're trying to give this list to someone who's maybe never seen a sandwich or never eaten a sandwich or never made a sandwich, it gets kind of complicated kind of fast. And it depends on what kind of sandwich that you're asking someone to make. Like if it's peanut butter and jelly, you have to think about, okay, go get the peanut butter. And then if someone doesn't know what peanut butter is, you have to be like, okay, this is peanut butter. There's different levels of detail that we might have to go into in this process that make it a lot more complicated list than you might even think right off the bat. So hopefully you thought about that a little bit, and hopefully you're kind of seeing that idea of like a progression from one step to the next step, because you can't just start slicing the sandwich when you don't even have peanut butter on there. So just with that in mind, we're going to move on to something called linear logic. Basically, linear logic is something that follows a sequential order or series of steps. And maybe you've heard the word linear like in math before. That was where I first heard the word linear. And basically it just means something following a straight line, which in this case is pretty clear. It's like you're following one step to the next step in a straight line. And computers can't make the leap like we can when it comes to logic. They have to follow this linear progression. They can't, in your mind, if you're thinking about that sandwich example, a computer is like the type of person that has never even seen a sandwich before, doesn't even know what peanut butter is, totally removed, no concept. So we have to define everything for a computer so that they can properly understand or process information in a correct way. And basically, it just is, like I said, following that series of steps, like bam, bam, bam. We have to think about the order that we define everything in too, because like with the sandwich, if you don't say what peanut butter is, and then all of a sudden you're like, put peanut butter on the sandwich, it's like, wait, what? What's going on? So we don't want the computer to freak out. We have to kind of take it slow, be patient, define every little thing along the way. All right, so now we're going to move into something called binary reasoning. Now this is a little bit different, but it kind of goes hand in hand with linear logic. So the Latin root bini means 2 by 2. And so that's an easy way to kind of think about this word binary. It means anything that has two possibilities. Maybe you've heard of binary code, like ones and zeros. We're actually going to talk about that a little bit later. But binary reasoning basically follows that pattern of like, it's either one thing or it's another thing, and there's no in between. So some examples of binary reasoning that you've probably seen are like yes/no questions or true or false questions, where it is either yes or it's no. There's no room for error in between. So we can use this type of logic to get computers to process information. They can follow this type of logic if it is placed in the correct order with our definitions and that sort of thing. So we can get the computer to analyze inputs, which in our example is going to be cats, and give us outputs, which also in this example is going to be names. We're going to be trying to name some cats. Basically, we get all these cats, we're going to need to try to name them using this code that we've written. So if the cat is orange, we will name it Fred. If the cat is black, we will name it George. And if the cat is any other color, we are going to name it Steve. So let's go ahead and get our inputs. All right, so here's our inputs. We have cat 1, cat 2, and cat 3. And basically, we're going to run through this code for every single cat just to figure out what its name is going to be. So if the cat is orange, we will name it Fred. That is a true statement. Therefore, that cat's name will be Fred. That is going to be the output that we will get is Fred. Now, let's move on to the next cat. If the cat is orange, we will name it Fred. Well, this cat's not orange, so that's not true, and we're going to move on to the next thing. If the cat is black, we will name it George. Well, this middle cat's also not black, so we can't name it George, and we're just going to move on to the next thing. If the cat is any other color, we will name it Steve. Awesome. This cat is another color that isn't defined in those first two statements. Therefore, its name is going to be Steve. All right, and final cat. If the cat is orange, we will name it Fred. Nope, cat's not orange. We're going to move on. If the cat is black, we will name it George. Perfect. That cat's name is George. There we go. So let's see what our outputs are. Awesome. Fred, Steve, and George, just like what we thought it was going to be. Woo, got it right. So now we're going to talk about what computer code actually is, because all of this in theory is like, awesome, I could totally do that, like write out the steps, all of that sort of thing is pretty easy to understand once you get some practice with it. But computer code is kind of where the difficulty comes in. So, like I said, you've probably heard of binary code, and this is how computers talk to one another. It's how devices communicate with one another through binary code. But human to computer code is something different. It has multiple languages, so some that you've probably heard of, maybe like Python, Java, C++, anything like that that you've maybe like heard of. It's kind of thrown around in like computer jargon. It's probably a programming language. And these all kind of have slightly different syntaxes, or slightly different words are used to mean different things. And there's a lot of overlap, but basically it's just saying like, oh, if I'm coding in Java, it means I'm using this word to represent this type of function. It's just like speaking another language. If you have a relative that speaks a different language and you have to kind of switch languages to communicate with them, that's exactly what we have to do to communicate with computers. So combining these programming languages with an understanding of computer logic is what gives us something that's usable. It gives us code that can actually perform tasks and do all those super cool things that you've probably seen code do. That's what we get when we efficiently combine a programming language and this understanding of computer logic that we've been talking about. All right, so what is pseudocode? Now this, to me, was like the major first step in understanding any type of code, is like having proper pseudocode. So the word pseudo means fake. So basically pseudocode is just fake code. And you're probably thinking, anyone can write fake code. And yeah, anyone can write fake code. Basically, it's just the plain English or preferred language outline for what we want our code to do. So like we used before with the cats, that was an example of pseudocode. Basically, we were saying, hey, if the cat is orange, we're going to name it Fred. That's what we want to happen if the cat is orange. But that's not actually like a computer language. That's not something the computer will understand. But for us, it helps us kind of define our goals, and it helps us kind of just organize ourselves a little bit. So yeah, it helps us figure out what functions to use and when to use them. It's always kind of helpful for me if I'm coding anything to write out pseudocode beforehand and then kind of go in and figure out the function stuff later. And pseudocode organizes your code into smaller pieces. So the most similar thing I can kind of think to this that's like this is just like an outline you do for your essay. You come up with like your introduction, maybe your thesis or like main point. You come up with your examples and then conclusion. That's like exactly what pseudocode does. Basically, it just sort of defines these overarching goals that you have for your code. And so that way, even if you're not fluent in code, you can understand pseudocode, because you can be like, oh, hey, this is just like plain English, or like I said, preferred language version of what this code is doing. And then it can kind of help you break down actual computer code into a more understandable form if you're a beginner like me. All right, so here's a real example from the sensor code that we will be talking about in the next video, but here's just a small little chunk of it to give you kind of a feel of what it looks like. So the pseudocode that we just talked about is in gray. Computer doesn't read it at all. It is just for us to read. The computer does not read pseudocode, and it absolutely does not understand pseudocode. The logical operators here are in green. So like we talked about the binary reasoning, the like, if this happens, then we do this. If this happens, then we do this. That's what we call a logical operator. And so we can see those here in green, like the if, else if, and else are logical operators. So let's kind of break this down and see what's going on. So if there's a low concentration of particulate matter, light up one LED. That's what we want our sensor to do if there's a low concentration of particulate matter. So we use this function if, right, just like we did with the cats, the ratio is less than 5, which I've defined as low in my like household. That's just what I've kind of come up with through practice. All right, so now we have this function digital, right? Now that is something we're going to talk more about in the next video. Basically, it's just a function of the language. You don't really need to pay attention to it right now. We're saying, hey, set this LED to high. This LED is going to be low or off, and this LED is going to be low or off. That way we get one LED lighting up when the ratio is what we've defined as low. All right, so now we want to say, okay, cool. If it's low concentration, one light comes on. If it's a medium concentration, we want 2 lights to come on. So then we define this statement, else if. Basically, this is just like saying, if the cat is orange, then do this. If the cat is black, then do this. It just helps the computer understand that this is a different if statement than the one before. So I've defined medium concentration in my household, like I said, as like this number 7. So if the ratio is less than 7, then we want LED 1 to be high, LED 2 to be high, and LED 3 to be low or off. Basically, yeah, great. That's going to turn on 2 LEDs when the concentration of PM is in this range. When the ratio that we've already defined earlier in the code is in this range, it's going to execute this function. Finally, we have this else. So if it's high concentration, aka anything else, anything above 7 or above, then we're going to light up 3 LEDs. So we just say else. We don't have to say if it's 7 or greater. We can just say anything else happens, turn on all 3 LEDs, because that's the only possible thing that could happen other than those 2 options is having it be 7 or greater. So we don't really need to tell the computer because that would be redundant. So I hope that kind of gives you a feel for what you're going to be seeing in the next video. Yeah, like I said, just like the same thing with the cats, the computer runs through each of these steps. So say the computer, we calculated a ratio in this code that was maybe like 10. It would go through this. If ratio is less than 5, that's not true. Move on to the next thing. If the ratio is less than 7, that's not true. Go to the last thing. So it just says else. Anything else is, then the computer is like, awesome, turn on all 3 LEDs. So that's just kind of a feel for how computers think about stuff. Then quick summary. So this is like the need to know for the next video. I would say if you're already on the 3rd video and you came back here to refresh something, come to this spot right now, because this is the need to know to speak. So computer logic. Computers follow instructions 1 step at a time. Using binary reasoning and defining variables in a specific order are the foundations of basic code. All right, computer language. Humans communicate with computers via programming languages. Becoming fluent in a programming language, it means understanding its functions. So like we saw on the last page, the if, else, and like digital write and that stuff that was like, wait, what is this? That is the specific language that pertains to our Arduino window that we're going to be talking about in the next video. But that just kind of gives you an idea of like what a programming language looks like. All right, and then finally, successful code. It combines both the reasoning that we talked about and that computer logic with an understanding of a computer language. Pseudocode is often used to organize these functions so that it is as successful as it can be. All right, and finally, if you're interested at all on more coding, I highly recommend the Khan Academy computer programming courses. They're entirely free. You do need wireless internet to access them, though you probably have wireless internet if you're accessing this video. And basically, it just kind of walks you through, I believe it's JavaScript, on how to do some really cool stuff, like make pictures and like make games. I think it's pretty awesome. It's sort of how I started getting into code when I was younger, so I recommend it. All right, so I will go ahead and stop sharing. I will see you all in the next video.